to Hairstreamtv in NYC. Thank you so much for stopping by.
I'm heading over to B&H's conference to the New Yorker Hotel. I'm going to check out depth of field. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.
No, sir. I mean, a lot of the max.
This on a so it always has a cool light. But if you know you want to be, say you want to do commercial photography, and the white has to be white, then you just flip back to that.
Hi, how are you?
Like that? Did you have them too?
I guess one.
Oh, it's not going to the A plus mode.
Shooting with a high shutter rate. Actually, yeah, it's just the cover.
The diffuser?
Yeah. You didn't do whatever you use this.
This is pretty, right? But I like that yours is blue like that. Not the light, just the
I guess depending on how close or how far away you are, right? Yeah. The yoke is with this to this point here, which you mount on top of whatever.
So if you wanted to shoot straight down, you could also put 5/8 mount.
How is this
offset.
like for product photography?
It's fine because you have a full. Yeah, I mean, if you want to further diffuse it, you can. We sell soft boxes that'll mount in front of it. It's like a grip truck and a 7-pound grip truck.
Yeah. What's the 17%?
This is the intensity, so you can dial up the
Got it. Temperature intensity.
Right.
Wow. It's phenomenal.
And then if you wanted to do this with something smaller, there's two little brothers over there that are more.
Guess who I ran into? Oh my God, the famous Devin. Hello, Devin.
Hello, it's been forever.
Oh my God, can I just take a look at you? Of course, you have gotten even more fabulous.
Usually we insist on an hour. Sometimes an hour. Didn't take 2 phone calls. And so he didn't say what he wanted to do. I don't mind my favorite. Yeah. So I think that the equipment is of course important. If you don't have a camera and the camera doesn't work, then you're not getting a picture. So of course it's important. And we should be aware of what's going on. But that that should be a given. Let's say one day a week you give all your attention to that, but the other more powerful, more interesting, more unusual, more strange, you know. What can I do to make it better, you know? Nowadays you're lucky because when I was starting out, there wasn't this thing called the internet where you could just simply type in capturing.The and up comes 300 pictures of capturing.The, Ansel Adams, Richard Avedon. You type that in and you've got them all in your fingertips. You have to go out and find a book and then afford to buy a book and over your bed before you could research, you know.
I have one last question for you.
Sure.
Is it true that better photographers wear reversed black slouch hats? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring Albert Watson. He's going to straight into the podcast and our podcast.
And that means my ISO has to go way up there to come back. If I'm at 1.4, I can keep my ISO down and give it room to go up if it has to. But I also just really love the story that it tells. They had a food truck and it was pizza in the same place that all of my portrait lives. Why? Because it is. I like to shoot portraits at 2.0. I like the focal length of 135. I found a lot when I was using my 70 to 200. This is how you can find me on the internet if you want to see me about mostly lenses for wedding photography. And I know that sounds like a very dry topic for a presentation, right? Like it sounds like I'm going to stand up here and read you a catalog of lenses, which is definitely not what I'm going to do. But that said, the two questions that I get asked the most, and I've been educating and teaching wedding photographers for about, what year is this? About 8 years now, I would say, somewhere in there. But I don't just educate, I also still shoot. Last year I shot 49 weddings, and I shoot portraits, and I shoot headshots, and lots of stuff. So, yes, I have an educational venture. Yes, I do stand up here and teach at workshops and conventions and all of that. But I'm a working photographer first and foremost, and that's the most important thing to me is to take care of my clients. But when I do get asked, and I know you guys have probably seen this in Facebook groups before, right? If you had to shoot a wedding with one lens, if you're on a desert island, and you could only have one lens, and my answer is, if I was on a desert island and I could only have one thing, it wouldn't be a lens, it would be a boat. But that's apparently not taking the question in the spirit that it was intended. The other question that people ask a lot, and I know you've also seen this in Facebook groups and online, is what lens should I buy next? Right? I have 24 to 70, I have 70 to 200, what should I buy next? But that's not really the question you should be asking, because putting together a kit of wedding photography gear isn't just buying off of the "and now you're a wedding photographer" checklist. Because the next lens for me might be a 35-1.4. But you might never want a 35-1.4. That might not even factor into how you shoot. The next lens for you, maybe it should be a 200-2.8. I don't know. So giving you a list of what lenses you should buy and what lens you should have next is really doing you a disservice. The most important thing that you can learn to do is to see and create your own unique style as a photographer, and then buy the lenses and source the gear that will help you make that come to be. So what story are you telling? Why would you pick gear for anything? If you're an artist, if you're a painter, if you are a writer, if you don't know the product you're creating, why would you just go buy tools? You might buy all the wrong stuff. You might go buy a bunch of paints and then realize that you bought a bunch of oil paints, but what you really want to do is a watercolor, and you don't have the right stuff. So putting together the gear bag that I have now, and I'm just going to talk to you about what I use. Am I right? Probably not. But it's just how I shoot, and these are the tools that I've got to make the images that I make. They might be the right tools for you. They might be completely the wrong tools for you. All I can do is talk to my experience and my 18 years of being a photographer and how gear has affected me in the way that I see. So before you even know what lens to pick up and put on your camera, you have to know what kind of story you're telling, and that's really important. So let's take that image that was just up there, for example, and let's throw up two versions of that image. You've got a wide angle, and you've got something that's a little bit more zoomed in. Now the image on the left, shot with a 35-1.4. The image on the right, shot with a 135-2.0. What story are you telling here? Are you telling the story of a couple and the pylons in the background and Manhattan across the river? Or are you telling a story that's more intimate, of just the couple, where the background elements support the story, but they're not a key player in the story? Because the image on the left is an environmental portrait. There's two subjects, well, technically three, the couple and the city. In the image on the right, it's just the couple. Now you might look at this and say, okay, great, you've got a 35-1.4. Couldn't you have just hopped down off of the rock that you were standing on and gotten closer with the 35-1.4 and then shot it at 1.4? You're gonna lose your background when you do that. You're not. Because the perspective between a 135 and the perspective of a 35 is a very different perspective. Another example. Two portraits of the same bride. She's in the same spot in both. One is shot with a 135 and one is shot with a 35. And again, it's not just as simple as, well, you can take the image on the right if you got really far back with your 135, or you could take the image on the left if you got super close up with your 35. The focal length that you're choosing is affecting the story you're telling. And yes, some of it is about where you're moving your feet, but the focal length really changes your story. And that's sort of the most important thing. That was the biggest light bulb moment for me when putting together a bag of gear, is how focal length actually changed my story. Here's one more example. Image on the left, 35-1.4. Image on the right, 135-2.0. What's your story? Is it the couple? Is it the car? Is it the cool brick building that used to be cool but is now actually a West Elm? If any of you live in Brooklyn, it's over by the water down in Dumbo. It used to be awesome, now it's a West Elm, which is actually still awesome, but that's neither here nor there. There are two completely different stories being told. Maybe you're telling one, maybe you're telling the other, maybe you're telling both. But it's not just about focal length and what it does with your foreground and background. It's about your perspective and your involvement in the story at each focal length. So with a wide angle lens, you're closer to the scene. You're part of the moment. You're in people's face. If I'm having a conversation with these people right here in the front row, if I hop down and I sit right here and I'm talking to you, I'm in your moment with you. Or I could be talking to you in the back corner and I'm a little bit removed. So if you look at these two images, for example, this again, apparently I've got a big thing for Dumbo in Brooklyn, which I do. They're standing on the rocks, which by the way, you can't stand on anymore, or else someone will come yell at you and tell you to get off the rocks, which is a very sad story. So don't try this at home. The wide angle lens tells a story of closeness. There's a separation between your subject and your background. You're in on the moment, right? The exact same setting with a longer lens, or I'm not sure why that slide kind of jammed in over there, you're telling a very different story. I'm a little bit removed from what's going on. So the moment that's being captured is a little bit more intimate. It feels like your background is closer to your subject. You have that compression of foreground and background versus the stretching of compression with a wider angle lens. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Yes. So it's not just, oh, how do I want to affect the foreground-background relationship? It's how much do I, as the photographer with the camera, want to be in on this scene, if that makes sense. And it's not just, again, to reiterate, about the foreground and background. It's about the closeness to the story you're telling. It's about how much you want the environment to be part of your story and how much you don't. How much you want to be in on the moment that your couple is having versus having a remove. And you don't normally think about things like this when you're thinking of what your next lens purchase is going to be. But I do. I don't buy anything now unless it's going to help me tell a different story. Which, no, I don't know what the next lens I'm going to buy is. Just get that right out of the way. So do you want to be up in on it? Do you want to be part of the moment? Or do you want to step back and be a little bit removed on the moment? Both are powerful. All of these things are powerful. Subject and background relationship. Intimacy in the moment. Think about all of these things before just saying, well, I mean, I guess I need a 70 to 200 because I shoot church ceremonies and I have to stand far back. The proximity that you are to your subjects is not a reason to buy a wide-angle lens or to buy a telephoto lens. Think about it in terms of story. right? So I basically built a 2-hour presentation that I have to give in 45 minutes. So we're just going to keep trucking along. So I'm going to talk to you about my lens progression. And again, I've been doing this for 18 years. And this is sort of how I got to where I'm at right now. The first bag of gear that I have is a bag of lenses that a bunch of other photographers told me that I needed, right? But when you're new, or when you're new into wedding photography, and your style is new, you don't know what you need. You don't know what lenses are going to tell your story, so you rely on the advice of professionals that you trust, like me, or somebody who speaks before me, or somebody you found on the internet. You look at the work of what other people are making, and you think, okay, I'd like to make work kind of like that. What tools did you use to make those images, right? Which makes perfect sense. But I bought a bag of gear that wasn't necessarily my bag of gear. Has anybody done that? Bought a lens because someone was like, this is a grip Charlie's hand, straight up. You bought a lens because somebody told you it was awesome. Case in point, my 24-70. I don't ever use it. It's so many people's favorite lens, and it's a phenomenal lens, whether you're Nikon or Canon or whatever you use. 24-70 2.8, great all-purpose lens that I never ever used. It was never quite wide enough. It was never quite long enough. So I had that bag of gear. That's great. Then, instead of not listening to the internet, I decided to double down on listening to the internet, which is never something you should do. And I read a bunch of stuff that said, you need to be a minimalist. You can shoot a whole wedding with a 24-70 and a 70-200, which technically you can. You can shoot a whole wedding with any one lens you pick. It doesn't mean it's going to be good. I can shoot a whole wedding with a 200-2.8. Good luck in a getting ready room, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of all of these other lenses that I don't use, and I'm just going to roll with the 24-70 and a 70-200. But then I kept wanting other things. I kept being like, oh God, I wish I could go to 1.4 here. Or, you know what, I really wish I had a but I don't have that. And it wasn't really what was working for me. So I trickled down on the internet. Because it's going great. The advice I'm getting so far is going phenomenal. And then I decided to become a prime minimalist. Because someone told me that my zooms were making me lazy. And I listened. For any of you who know me in real life, there are many words you can use to describe me. Lazy is not one of them. So, no, my zooms weren't making me lazy. They weren't really the right lenses for me, but I went to this prime minimalist approach, a 35 and an 85. And I know a lot of photographers who shoot that way and do beautiful work. I struggled really hard with this because I don't just see life at 35 millimeters or just 85 millimeters. So this Zen minimalist bag that I put together because I thought it was going to help me actually hurt me. So what I have now, over years and years and years of trial and error and buying lenses and selling lenses, and I have no problem saying, I bought this lens and it's not the right one for me, and letting it gently go out to the world and be the right lens for someone else. Now, the lenses that I have in my bag help me tell the stories that I want to tell in the way that I want to tell them. Cool story, let's actually talk about it. So, building my bag of lenses. I'm going to talk you through what I've got from most important to least important. And that's where I'm at right now, as of February. It's February now, right? As of February 2019, these are the lenses in my bag. It could change tomorrow, or it could be exactly the same for the next 2 years. I don't know. Because even though I have been doing this for a long time, and I feel really good about where my style's at right now and where my bag of gear is at right now, lenses in my bag. So things will evolve. Don't be afraid to let your gear selection, and I'm not just talking about lenses, I'm talking about flashes and the way you light and camera bodies. Don't be afraid to evolve. So, most important lens in my bag is the 24-105 f4. It's an f4. It is not a 2.8. It is the most important lens in my bag because of the versatility to me of the range of focal length, right? 24 is about as wide as I like to go. I like to go much longer than 105, but in a zoom lens, A 24 to 105 is a phenomenal all-purpose lens. It's a lens my second shooter uses a lot. It's a lens I put on a camera and hand to my assistant a lot. Next most important lens, if I were buying my bag again in order, the 85-1.4. Not the 1.8, the 1.4. Yep, the 1.4 is definitely more expensive. But when I pull out that 85, I know I'm going to be shooting it. On usually my left hip camera, and there's a reason for it. It's because I reach to the right first. So my all-purpose one for the rest of the day is the 24 to 105, and it hangs out on the left side for the rest of the day. Ceremony, portraits, sparkler exits, great lens for sparkler exits. You can see it gets used for a little bit of everything. Someone walking down the driveway to get into the car, a first dance from far away, a first dance from up close. Zooms don't make you lazy. You're lazy whether you use a zoom or not, right? Like if you're a lazy person, using a zoom doesn't make you lazier. And using a prime doesn't mean you're less lazy, it just means you get more steps in on a wedding day. 4 to 105 is a really important lens because it lets me do things like the image in the middle, on the bottom, and then the image right next to it without having to move my feet. And that's not me being lazy, that's me being unobtrusive. Because I also don't want to be a pain on the wedding day and have guests go back later and be like, so that was super fun, but that photographer was insane. And moving around a lot and pulling focus from things. So for example, you can see on both of those dancing pictures, I'm not shooting into the band, I'm shooting into the crowd. Which means that I'm sort of on stage with a couple and everyone can see me, and I want to minimize how much I'm moving around because I don't want to distract them from what's going on. Usually, anytime I'm going to use an off-camera flash for a portrait, like the one on the far left, which was taken in front of a closed garage door outside at night, the 24 to 105 is a great go-to lens. I don't often shoot close-up portraits like that at anything other than f4. I'm not at 1.4, I'm not at 1.8. I'm the kind of crazy wedding photographer right now who actually cares if my subjects are in focus. Not light and airy, nothing is soft and gentle. I want everything to be harsh and crisp, which just sounds terrible, but we're gonna roll with it. But as you can see, again, it is a very wide range of things that I shoot with this lens, which is why it's so important. Alternatives to this. If you like the range, if you think I kind of need something roundabout in here, but a 24 to 105 is not really what I'm looking for, you could try that 24 to 70-8. That's a holy grail lens for a lot of people. It just wasn't for me. There's also a large assortment of primes in this 24 to 105 range. You could replace it with primes. You could find that 35 and 85 is pretty much where you're set when you're using your 24 to 105, so why don't you? If you are an icon photographer, I believe yours is the 24 to 120 purpose. As I said before, when I take that 85-1.4 and I put that on my camera, it is because I'm going to shoot it at 1.4. Now I have to give you a note about 1.4. Do not focus and recompose at 1.4 if you want your pictures in focus. It doesn't surround in my camera, so that, for example, this image that you see right here, there was a focal point directly on top of her diamond. And I moved it over there and did not move myself, and I'm wiggling. But the 85-1.4, especially I've been using it a lot now with my new R, the mirrorless. It is a beautiful combo, which lets you, and also if you think about it, if you're at 1.4, it lets you keep raising your ISO higher. So if I'm using the 24 to 105 f4 in a situation like this, the lowest I can go is f4. And that means my ISO has to go way up there to come back. If I'm at 1.4, I can keep my ISO down and give it room to go up if it has to. But I also just really love the story that it tells. It focuses in on the couple. The background elements, you can see them. They're part of the scene, but they're not the focus of the scene. So during ceremonies, I will use it to shoot tables at the reception, especially if I really want to focus in on just a teeny tiny little detail. Like these were the place cards, and they were written on this sweet little curve of really thick paper, and I just wanted to shoot details of all kinds. Why not? Alternatives. I mean, yes, 24 to 72.8 gets you closer to 1.4 But it doesn't get you all the way to 85, but it's an alternative if that's something you want. 24 to 105 hits you at that 85 millimeter range, but you're at f4, or the 85 to 1.8. Definitely a more economically priced lens. You will see, if you try an 0.8 and you try a 1.4, you'll see where your money is going when you upgrade to the 1.4. But for many, many, many years, the 85 that I had was the 1.8, and it worked great for me. And then when I was ready for the 1.4, I upgraded. I have absolutely no scientific explanation for this at all, other than I really do believe that some pieces of gear are the right gear at the right time, holding an off-camera light. Because where I stand for a processional, in a field. They had a food truck and it was pizza, probably in the same place that all of my portrait lens. Why? Because it is. I like to shoot portraits at 2.0. I like the focal length of 135. I found a lot when I was using my 70 to 200 that I hung out in the 135 range a lot. So, I use it for portraits all day. I love it. Whether it's somebody standing on stairs, whether it's a couple cuddling in front of a fountain, whether it's somebody blowing cigar smoke in the middle of January, I love the perspective of 135. I love how flattering it is to the body. I love how 2.0 lets you have your subject in focus while still knocking out the background. I love the foreground-background relationship at 135. I love everything about it. Is that f2.8 on a macro is not the same as 2.8 on a 70 to 200. So all of these images, let's see, in the way that I need to magnify with that macro for the specific thing that I'm hand zoom doesn't mean you're lazy. I'm crouched down waiting for a ceremony to start. The bride and her parents walk out of this red barn, and I'm all the way at 70. And then I wait, and they come. Alternatives. 24 to 105 f4? Sure. If you want to zoom while you're on the dance floor, go to town. I'm using my flash on manual. I'm almost always at 8 power with my on-camera flash. I might need a twin. The horror. In the middle of a dangerous situation. It is loud, it is camera. And if we have flash, we can backlight, I'm sorry. At 135, at 2.0.
So I hope you enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe. This is just for informational purposes for those of you out there that are trying to up your game in photography. Thanks so much for watching Hairstream TV in NYC.